Hello everyone. I hate that I have to intro this like YouTube video, but I feel like I have to. Last week is what I'm considering to be the mid-season break, as we only have one more episode left in the season after this one. And the next episode is going to be a little different. I want to get you all involved. I want to hear your theories about Flight 370 so I can break them down and discuss them in an iceberg-style video. If you're interested, you can submit these to the only current post in the show's subreddit. The name will be in the description, but for those of you who are more auditory learners, let's face it, you wouldn't be listening to a podcast made by a 16-year-old in his closet if you weren't. The subreddit name is Into Thin Air Podcast. One more time, that is r/Into Thin Air Podcast. Anyways, on to the episode. Last week, I mentioned that one of, if not the first mental scenario people jump to when a plane goes missing is a hijacking. And that was obviously one of the public's first and worst fears when Flight 370 was declared missing, and was only furthered when it was revealed that the plane had received and responded to, in air quotes, the 2 sat phone calls it received in its final 2 hours aloft. When the 2, or maybe 4, depending on who you ask, people traveling under fraudulent passports were discovered, it seemed as if people's worst fear had been all but confirmed. That was until the men were basically exonerated when it was revealed that they were most likely just seeking asylum. Once we were able to breathe again, knowing that the people on Flight 370 at least weren't scared by men with guns in their final moments, we allowed ourselves a moment of solace.
It's a good sign. Younger the better. It'd be a fucked up guy to take down this plane.
What you just heard was the original introduction of this episode. In fact, I was almost done with post-production before this video by 60 Minutes Australia came across my recommended page on YouTube.
Is the biggest aviation mystery of all time, the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines flight MH370, about to be solved? Well, yes, if you believe the man you're about to meet.
The video is obviously a little different than that woman's tagline introduction made it sound. Richard Godfrey is a British aerospace engineer and physicist who has been focused on finding Flight 370 for several years now. In fact, I glossed over his claims that were being reported on all the way back in November of last year, just dismissing them as another crackpot trying to get their 15 minutes of fame. However, his confidence has now caught the attention of reputable news sources such as 60 Minutes Australia. This interview you're about to hear was uploaded 13 days ago as of writing on March 5th. I've delayed working on this episode until more information has come to light. However, with everything being stalled for the time being, I feel fairly confident in restarting production on this episode. Especially if I want to get this episode out by March 8th, which is the 8th-year anniversary of Flight 370 going missing. Richard's biggest task is now convincing authorities to restart the search that has already cost so much and returned so little. Godfrey believes that the key to uncovering the plane's final resting place is, of all things, ham radio waves.
I'm looking to try and detect anomalies in the signals reflected back from an aircraft. You can follow that data and you can see where an aircraft may have disturbed the radio signals, and you can pick up those disturbances.
Have these radio enthusiasts across the globe inadvertently helped you find MH370? Have they helped locate the missing wreckage?
Indeed they have.
Godfrey is so confident in part due to his flight path prediction being almost a mirror image of the one given to us by the Malaysian government that we've looked over for the past 2 episodes. However, the main difference is that Richard Godfrey's flight path is so much more intricate than that of the one that we've had for the past 8 years now.
There are in total 160 of these detections, so they've been disturbed by an aircraft, in this case MH370.
How can you be so sure that it was a plane, that it was MH370 that disturbed these radio frequencies?
It's very easy because out in the middle of the Indian Ocean, there was just one other aircraft in several hours that passed, and that passed an hour's flying time away from MH370. So it's very easy then to discount you're picking up another aircraft and whether you're picking up MH370.
So it can only be a plane that was picked up through this data?
Yeah, it has to be an aircraft at a certain altitude, not picking up ships on the surface of the water or things like that.
Godfrey's analysis gave way to a previously unknown anomaly that he says could be the key as to finding out what happened to Flight 370.
It does seem very strange when you're trying to lose an aircraft in the remotest part of the southern Indian Ocean that you enter a holding pattern for 20 minutes.
As we've already talked about, the initial search that took place over the first 4 years of the plane's vanishing was more than just expansive, covering a total of 120,000 square kilometers, or 46,332 square miles, which Godfrey believes he can shrink all the way down to just 300 square kilometers, or just shy of 116 square miles. No, I didn't just misspeak. 46,000 shrunken down to just 116. Godfrey's search area does overlap with part of one of the previous search areas. Godfrey's search area also includes virgin seabed that's never been explored before.
Why would a search be any different this time? Why would we turn something up this time?
With this very difficult terrain, it is possible to miss wreckage. When you're going through 120,000 square kilometers, you get one chance, one pass of each point. With 300 square kilometers, you can afford in just a couple of weeks to go several passes from different angles.
One of Godfrey's more controversial claims is that Flight 370 had an active pilot for the entirety of its time aloft. Like we discussed at the top of this episode and left on a cliffhanger on the last episode, one of the most prominent theories when a plane goes missing is that of a hijacking. One of the main suspects of this claim from the beginning was none other than the pilot himself, Zaharie Ahmad Shah. Richard's flight path shows what seems to be a loop, which would have been way too complicated for the autopilot to do on its own. This loop took place over the course of roughly 20 minutes next to Indonesia.
Everyone has assumed up until now that there was a straight path, perhaps even on autopilot, perhaps even a ghost flight. I think there was an active pilot for the whole flight, and it certainly wasn't a straight line.
What do you think was happening in that time? Do you think that's when he may have been communicating with the Malaysian government?
He may have been communicating with the Malaysian government. He may have been checking whether he was being followed. He may have just simply wanted time to make up his mind where I go from here. I hope that if there was any contact with authorities in Malaysia, that after 8 years now, they would be willing to divulge that.
Now, I'm not here to either agree or disagree with Mr. Godfrey's claims. The next episode of Into Thin Air will be out on Wednesday the 16th of March, and where we'll be going over the rest of Mr. Godfrey's interview and the fallout that Flight 370 has had on popular culture over the past 8 years. And now, while there still will be another episode after that, that second episode will be the final one of this season, and that Reddit post is still up if you want to be involved. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next week.